We're going to continue on our little Christmas series this morning, thinking about the wonder of Christmas, which is awesome. Like Rich said last week, I am a big Christmas fan, and so I get very excited this time of year. I went on a Christmas adventure yesterday, which was super fun. I found some actually cold weather, which helps me feel Christmassy. Like, it's been the hardest thing transitioning to living here, where we think it's cold at this time of year, but it isn't really. I remember the first Christmas I was here, I was sat having breakfast with Cheryl Perry, and like 2 days before Christmas, and it was like, we were sat outside, overlooking the ocean, bright blue sunshine. I had like my sunglasses on, I was crying about the fact, but it doesn't feel like Christmas because I'm outside and it's warm. So I found some cold weather yesterday, and I'm feeling particularly Christmassy. And so one of the things I love about Christmas is Christmas traditions. And as a family growing up, we had lots of traditions, lots of things that we would do every year, and it was really, really fun. And recently a friend asked me, what were some of your family traditions growing up? And in telling her, I remembered one that I hadn't thought about for a really long time. And that was this, that each year my mom has a nativity scene, a crib scene. So if you can put the first photo up, that she would get out. This is it. Kind of old school. My dad made this little shelter for them, the little stable, which is very exciting. It has lights in it now. So she would carefully place this on top of the mantelpiece above the fire every year. But there would be one vital piece missing. Can anyone tell or see what's missing from this scene? No baby Jesus. Yes, because he's not born until Christmas Day, in theory, and so we can't place him in ahead of time. He does not get to be in there until Christmas Day. So here comes the tradition that every Christmas morning would be started by, my mom would have hidden baby Jesus. So if you can go to the next photo. She got really excited. I asked her for these photos ahead of this. I think she got overexcited and took a whole series of photos of the process, because I think she misses doing it. Because she would hide baby Jesus somewhere around the house. And then, here he is, hiding. There he is. And it was my sister and I's job to go and find him. We would have a scavenger hunt of sorts, I guess, every Christmas morning to find him. And whoever found him then got the honor of placing him into the scene to complete the nativity scene. So if you're going to go to the next one, here we go. Here he is now placed in here. And it was, between my sister and I, there was some serious sister rivalry to be the one to find Jesus and place him in. And it was just a really lovely Christmas tradition each year that we would do. But as Rich shared last week, it's so easy when we do things time after time to lose that sense of excitement, that sense of awe, of wonder of these things. And like he said, familiarity is a huge, huge enemy of wonder. The more familiar we are with something, the easier it is to lose our sense of wonder over it. And over time, Christmas is something that, happens every year. We do these things all the time. And so Christmas is really at risk of that sense of wonder being lost. And while my mom did continue this tradition for longer than my sister and I were interested in it, and I think she clearly still would do it if we were there because of how into the photos she got. Imagine two teenagers being woken up earlier than they deem necessary on Christmas morning to go and find the baby Jesus. I'm like, Mom, we don't want to do this. But the sense of wonder in this came from the fact that we didn't know where baby Jesus was going to be each year. She got pretty creative with hiding him. Sometimes it would take us a while. I think it was her ploy just to keep us entertained while she did other Christmas things. But the sense of wonder came from the unknown factor. We had to kind of question, where is he going to be? Where are we going to find him? And so this morning, that's kind of the stance I want to take on this idea of the wonder of Christmas. See, as a noun, wonder is defined as a feeling of surprise mingled with admiration caused by something beautiful, unexpected, unfamiliar, or inexplicable. That's wonder, all of those things. As a noun, that describes that. And this is that awe and that wonder that we want to feel about Christmas. Even though it's familiar, we want to still be in that place of feeling the wonder of what God did through Christmas. That's why we remember it. We remember the beginnings of what God was going to do for humanity through Jesus. But you see, wonder can also be used as a verb, an action-oriented. There's an action attached to it. And as a verb, wonder is described as a desire to be curious or to know something. A desire to be curious or to know something, to discover something, to find something else out, to discover an unknown thing. And I want to suggest that it's actually often as we activate this idea of wonder as a verb, as discovering something, as being curious, that is what allows us to experience that emotion of wonder when it comes to the familiar, when it comes to Christmas and the birth of Jesus. I'm sure that everyone involved in the story of Jesus' birth would have had quite a lot of questions about various things that happened. It was unusual. It was unexpected. There were lots of things that didn't make sense. And so I'm sure there were lots of questions flying around or thoughts of questions. But one person in particular really stands out for me when we think about this idea of taking a stance of wondering, and that's Mary. And so we're going to read the Christmas story together this morning. I know you'll know it as a refresher. It's always good to read it. So we're going to read it from Luke 2. So if you have a Bible with you, if you want to go ahead and turn to Luke chapter 2, and then we're going to read that together. And as we read, your task is to watch out for Mary's response. How does Mary respond to these events that take place, and what could we see Mary doing? Okay, so Luke 2, starting at verse 1. In those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world, and everyone went to their own town to register. So Joseph also went up from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to Bethlehem, the town of David, because he belonged to the house and line of David. He went there to register with Mary, who was pledged to be married to him and was expecting a child. While they were there, the time came for the baby to be born, and she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in cloths and placed him in a manger, because there was no guest room available for them. And there were shepherds living out in the fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks at night. An angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around, and they were terrified. But the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all the people. Today, in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord. This will be a sign to you. You will find a baby wrapped in cloths and laying in a manger." Suddenly, a great company of heavenly hosts appeared with the angel, praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth peace to those whom his favor rests." When the angels left them and had gone back into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, "Let's go to Bethlehem and see this thing that has happened, which the Lord has told us about." So they hurried off and found Mary and Joseph and the baby, who was laying in the manger. When they had seen him, they spread the word concerning what they had been told about this child, and to all who would hear. And all who heard were amazed at what the shepherds said to them. But Mary treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart. The shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all the things they had heard and seen, which were just as they had been told. What do we see Mary's response to everything that's taken place being? What is it that she does? Anyone notice anything about Mary's response? I'll give you a clue. It says it in verse 19. Yeah, she treasures them up and she ponders them in her heart. To ponder is another kind of description of thinking about them, to wonder, to question, to get curious. We can learn a lot about Mary through just that one line. She treasured these things up and she pondered them in her heart. And that is because the main thing that we can learn from Mary in this moment is that Mary was a wanderer. She was a wanderer. She was curious. She asked questions. She was a deep thinker. You know, we don't know a lot about Mary. There's no great profile, like Wikipedia-style profile or anything about Mary in the Bible. We don't know much about her. We know that she was really young. We know where she was from. We know that she was engaged to Joseph, and that's about it. But we can surmise from what we read of her that she was a deep thinker. She was a wanderer. You know, and there's other moments that remind us of that. The first time that Mary was visited by an angel and told that she was going to be the mother of God's son, we read that in Luke 1. We read that Mary was greatly troubled at his words and wondered what kind of greeting this might be. So she's a thinker. She sees an angel, and her response is to think, to wonder, to get curious, to ask questions. And then a little later, she actually asks the angel a question. She asks, "How will this be? For I am a virgin." You know, she has a question and she asks it. She's thinking about what the angel is saying. And then, in this moment, after the birth of Jesus, after everything had taken place, her response is to treasure them in her heart and to ponder them, to think on them, to meditate on them. You know, and Mary had experienced a lot in those months leading up to this event happening, you know. She had been visited by an angel. She'd become pregnant with the power of the Holy Spirit. She'd nearly lost her fiancé. She'd gone on a crazy journey to then give birth to her first son in less than ideal conditions, you know, away from home. But her response, in spite of all of those things, was to think, was to ponder, was to wonder about what was happening, to get curious. She understands that spending time wondering, questioning, being curious, asking questions is a key to her heart catching up with everything that she's been through and everything that she's experienced. You know, sometimes it takes time for our heart to catch up with what's going on around us, and this idea of wondering, getting curious, helps us with that. So how can we be more like Mary? What can we learn from her and how she lived that can help us with this idea of being wanderers and getting curious? Well, the first key that I see in living a lifestyle of wandering is that wandering takes intentionality. It takes intentionality to live being curious and wondering about what is happening around us. Now, there is a group of people that it doesn't take any intentionality to live this way, and that is young children. If you've ever spent any time around young children, you will know that one of their favorite questions is, or one of their favorite words, is why. Have you ever been around young kids who just, why? I've got a very short video to illustrate this point. So, Sophie, if you want to hit play.
Why?
Get up, girl.
Why?
It's daytime.
Not daytime, it's uptime.
Yeah, it's up time. You've got to brush your teeth.
Why?
Because you have morning breath.
Why?
Why what? No, kids can't have coffee.
Why?
Because coffee is for big people.
Why?
Because little kids can't drink it. It makes you too hyper.
Why make me too hyper? Give me a little bit.
No.
Why?
Why? Kids are really like that. So many kids. I was definitely like that as a kid. Asking why. Kids understand this idea of living in a place of curiosity, discovering new things. And it's, you know, while if you're around that for hours, it's very cute to watch a 2-minute or a 1-minute video of it. When you're around it for hours on end, it can get a little draining because you're like, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know why. Just because, you know, that's kind of what you want to, in the end, just say. But kids are on this journey of processing new information all of the time, and they understand that questioning things is going to help them learn new things. You know, it's amazing to watch kids in that process, discovering new things, often for the first time. And that you see wonder, awe and wonder in their eyes, joy and excitement as they discover things for the first time. And they're discovering so much because they're getting curious, because they're wondering, they're thinking, they're questioning things. Unfortunately, as we grow older, some of that natural curiosity can begin to wear off. You know, we can kind of get to that place where we think, oh, I kind of know how life works. I've done this before. I know how to do this thing. And so we just do things. You know, we can lose some of that curiosity, the desire to learn new things, or the desire to even expect that there are new things to learn. And so that is why for us as adults, intentionality has to be key to us living a lifestyle of wondering, just like Mary did. We have to choose to make space and time to ask those questions, to want even to have a desire sometimes to discover new things. It takes slowing down. You know, life is so fast. Things happen so quickly. So much happens. And that's true with Mary. I mean, so much had happened to her in a short period of time that it would have been easy for her to just carry on. You know, new baby's been born. Babies always need something from you. She's got a lot to do. She's got to figure out how to get back home. You know, there's so many things that she could just be doing. But what does she do? She takes time to pause, to reflect, to wonder about what has happened and what that means for her. She got curious about her situation. Now, like I said, we do know that she was very young. So she did have the curiosity of youth on her side. You know, it's thought that she was probably between 14 and 16, somewhere in that range. And so she did have the curiosity of youth, kind of like young kids, on her side. But she still had to choose. She still could have got caught up in everything that was in front of her that she needed to do or needed to get done. But she still chose to take a moment to pause, to ponder, to treasure these things in her heart. And the reality is that however long we've been on this earth, however much we know, however intelligent we are, there are always new things to discover. There are always new things that we can be learning. And that's especially true about God, right? He's just unfathomably more than we can ever imagine. And there's always new things that he wants to show us and reveal to us about who he is and what that means for us. And Paul reminds us of this a few times in his letters. In Ephesians 2, verses 6 and 7, he said, God raised us up with Christ and seated us with him in the heavenly realms in Jesus Christ, in order that in the coming ages he might show the incomparable riches of his grace. This is hinting towards even when we get to heaven, even face to face with God, there's going to be new things to learn about him. In the coming ages, we're still going to be learning and discovering new things. And if that's true in heaven, it's definitely true now. In 1 Corinthians 13, he reminds us again, he says, for now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall see fully. Shall know fully, even as I have been fully known. When we get to heaven, we will get to the part of knowing fully, but we have to question in order to get there. And the Greek word here that's used for know can actually be more accurately translated as to come to know or to learn. So Paul isn't saying here that as soon as we get to heaven, we're just going to instantly know, like a download of everything we could ever want to know about anything, and including God. No, even in heaven, there's going to be this process of coming to know things, of learning things. The other side of eternity, we still learn new things. God is always going to be revealing new aspects of who he is to us. And as we take time to wonder about God, that's when he can really do that. You know, he wants to show us more and more of who he is, but we have to make space and time for that to happen. It's not just going to happen by accident. It takes intentionality, just like Mary chose in that moment to take a moment to pause, to ponder, to wonder about what was going on. And so it's important to remember, though, that when we're thinking about getting curious, about wondering, about asking questions, we're not just talking about that cycle of overthinking. You know, I don't know if anyone in here is ever guilty of overthinking. I am a massive overthinker. One of my favorite, I've moved on slightly from why to just what if. But really it's the same thing, right? You know, if you spend much time around me and if I'm processing something, the phrase what if will come out of my mouth almost every other sentence, I think, because my brain just thinks like that. I'm faced with something or I'm thinking about something and I'm thinking, what about this? What about this? What about that? What about that? And, you know, I'm curious in a sense, but it's easy for that what if to not be the, what if this goes really, really well and it's amazing? It's easy for it to become the, but what if this goes wrong? Or what if this doesn't work out? Or what if this doesn't happen? And so when we're taking time and being intentional to ask questions, to wonder about God and who he is, about the things that are happening in our lives, we're not just getting stuck in this cycle of overthinking. Because what is the purpose of asking questions? Why do we ask questions? What is the purpose of that? Well, the purpose is to discover something new, right? To learn something new. Why is the 2-year-old asking why? Maybe sometimes just to be annoying, I don't know. But actually, they're really doing it to discover something new. Something that's being said to them doesn't make sense. They don't have a paradigm for it. They don't fully understand it. So they're asking why. They're asking for more information because they understand. They want to understand more. They want to learn something new. And so when we're asking questions, the purpose of that, the purpose of wondering, is to discover something new. And to do that, how do we do that? How do we make sure that we're discovering something new and not getting caught in this loop? Well, we find the answer in that. And the second key to this living a lifestyle, and that is that wondering involves listening as well. Not just asking the questions and talking, but listening as well. I read an article a little while ago, and it was a great title that I really stuck in my mind and I remembered. And the title was, "Are you really listening or are you just waiting to talk?" And I think that's probably a question that we should all ask ourselves from time to time. When I'm in conversation, either with somebody or with God, it applies to both. Am I really listening to what they're saying, or am I just waiting for my chance to say my thing, to get my point of view across? You know, am I actually listening to what they're saying and paying attention to it, or am I actually just stood there thinking about my response? You know, listening to maybe the first few words and then blanking out and thinking about, well, what am I going to say? What do I think about that? You know, I just want to talk. Let me at it. And again, just like I like to ask, what if, I like to talk. You will all know that. I am somebody who, you know, probably uses 100 words when I could use 5. I like to talk. I'm very verbal, always have been, right from a tiny child. My poor parents, very verbal and asked a lot of questions. But the problem, this translated to my writing style as well when I was at college in particular, and I would be writing papers and stuff, and they would have a word count. We had a range of words that we were allowed to be, you know, within, and I would write it, get it done, look at the word count and realize, oh gosh, I'm like literally hundreds of words over the word count. And so most times I would then email it to my mom with a plea to, Mom, please help me cut out 300 words or whatever from this. Like edit it down because I use a lot of words. I love to talk. I love to get my point of view across. And the thing is, though, that all we're doing is filling the space with words, and we're not listening. It's hard to understand something and to learn something new if we're not listening. This is so true in our relationship with God. You know, how often do we come to him with a list of things that we want to tell him about, or just talk at him, and then maybe we feel better because we've kind of got it all out there, and we move on. Okay, oh yeah, okay, time with God, check. But did we actually pause? And was there any silence in that time, any space for him to speak, for us to listen to him? You know, the saying goes, God made us with 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. We're supposed to listen more than we talk, actually. And when we do that, we give ourselves opportunities to learn new things, to discover new things. You know, the questions that Mary inevitably would have had about her situation and everything going on were the types of questions that probably no one on earth, unless inspired by God, you know, God speaking through them, no one on earth could fully answer those questions because her circumstances were pretty bizarre and very specific. You know, she needed God to be the one who was answering those questions, God to be the one that she was going to with those things. After all of that, that's what she did. After all of those things happened, that's what she did. She spent time questioning that. And we can trust. You know, what do we know about, if we ask God, what does he promise that he's going to do? He promises that he's going to answer. Luke 11 reminds us of this. You know, so I say to you, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be open to you. When we make space to wonder, to ask God questions, to connect with him in that way, and we make space to listen as well, both elements, we can trust that he wants to answer. He wants to allow us to discover these things. He wants to reveal new elements of who he is to us. There's not much point in asking questions to anyone, whether to, you know, your friend or to God, if you're not going to bother to listen to the answer. There's no point, really. Why are you asking that question if you're not willing to listen to the answer? We have to do that. And this takes making space and time and slowing down, just like intentionality takes slowing down, pausing, making space. So does this. We have to slow down to the point where we can listen, where we can make that space. It's just so easy to ask a question and not even really wait for the answer. I find myself doing that so often. To God in particular, I ask him a question, or I'm praying about something and asking and seeking, and I don't wait for the answer. And then I have a tendency to be frustrated that he's not doing what I think he's supposed to be doing, or not answering me, but I'm not waiting for him to be able to answer me. You can get stuck in that cycle. I'm frustrated with him because he's not doing his part, but he's probably frustrated with me because I'm not doing my part. I'm asking a question, but I'm not listening. I'm not taking time to actually discover the new thing. You know, and Christmas, this time of year, it's a busy time of year, right? There's always something you could be doing. For me, there's always another Christmas movie I could be watching. I love Christmas movies. But there's always stuff to do. And that stuff is not bad. It's not necessarily bad to be busy. But if our busyness and our to-do list and all the things we want to achieve comes at the cost of us pausing and taking time to get curious, to wonder, to ask questions, and to discover new things in that process, then that's a problem. You know, Mary, newborn baby, it's going to be pretty busy. She's going to have a lot of things to do. She still chose to pause, to wait, to wonder, to ponder, to make space for that. And God always has something new that he wants to reveal to us. He always has, you know, whether that is through the Christmas story specifically at this time of year, or whether that is about a situation in our life, direction that we need, whatever it is, he always has something that he wants to reveal to us. In 2014, Bethel Music were recording their album, You Make Me Brave, which is a great album. And while they were recording, it was a live recording, and as they were recording it, Amanda Cook sang out a spontaneous song, just a simple kind of verse of this spontaneous song, and these are the words of it. May we never lose our wonder. May we never lose our wonder. Wide-eyed and mystified, may we be just like a child, staring at the beauty of our King. And those words have been buzzing around my head in this Christmas season, when we're thinking of this idea of the wonder of Christmas. I never want to lose my wonder, whether that's at Christmas or the rest of the year too, the wonder of who Jesus is, the beauty of the King that is Jesus. These are simple but powerful words. And it's the cry of a heart that recognizes the awe and wonder of who Jesus is and what he's done and what he continues to do. I remember having a debate with a friend, got quite heated, about which was kind of more important, I guess, in the Christian calendar, whether that was Christmas or Easter. And her point was, well, Easter, resurrection, that's when, Jesus actually overcame sin and all of that. I was like, yes, but as a Christmas lover, I was on the side of Christmas. Because, if Jesus never had been born, which is what we're remembering, whether it happened December 25th or whenever it happened, doesn't matter. We've chosen that day to remember it, So that's what we're remembering, that Jesus was born, that he came to earth as a human. That was the beginning of his ministry, of his earthly ministry, and him achieving everything that he achieved through his time here. If Christmas never happened, we don't get Easter. That was my point. I was like, so obviously Christmas is more important because you have to have Christmas so that you can have Easter. If he wasn't born, he couldn't die. And it's kind of funny, but it's true. Christmas, that's why Christmas is important. It reminds us, it brings us back to the beginning of the story and reminds us of who Jesus is and what he accomplished by dying on the cross for our sins. That's what we begin to remember at Christmas. Mary understood that it was significant. She was possibly a chronic overthinker, just like myself, but she understood that there was value in taking time to wonder, to ask questions, to ponder things, to get curious. And so I want to encourage us, let's be like Mary. Let's be intentional. Let's listen as we ask questions. Let's make space to value wondering this Christmas and beyond. This doesn't just have to be a Christmas thing. This is all year round. We can take these principles of being intentional and getting curious and listening, actively listening, slowing down enough to take the time to listen. And how can we lose our wonder if we're constantly discovering new things about who God is, who he's created us to do, and what he's asking us to do on this earth? That's why children have a constant sense of wonder, because they're constantly discovering new things. And we have the opportunity to do that just as children do. We don't actually have to leave that phase of discovering new things daily. If you are intentional about asking the Lord and making space daily to ask him to reveal new things, he will do that. We can be daily discovering new things, daily living in wonder of who he is and what he's done and who we are and what we're created to do, as we take time to get curious and ask those questions and listen for the answer. We don't have to think that phase of our life was gone when we stopped asking why at the end of every sentence. We can live and remain in that place this Christmas, even if we're busy, and the rest of the year. Always, until even in heaven, we're going to be discovering new things, just like Paul reminds us. And so, as you're hearing this, as you're listening to this, you might be thinking that there's one of those two things, or maybe both, that stands out to you, that you struggle with being intentional and making space. Maybe that's the struggle, is making space to wonder, to ask questions, to get curious, being intentional. It's so easy to just be busy and not remember to do it. Or maybe the challenge for you is the listening, the truly listening, the slowing down and pausing enough to listen as we ask those questions. Or maybe it's both, because they're so linked together. And so I just want to end today by praying for us. I'm right there praying with you in this. I want to be more intentional. I want to listen more in my earthly relationships and my relationship with God. I want to be someone who people experience true listening from me. If you were to survey people after they'd spent time with me, I want them to say that they felt listened to, that they felt heard. And that takes intentionality as they're on their process of wondering. I get to be in that with them as I listen and discover new things as I go.